Adobe Acrobat Studio, your new foundation. Use PDF Spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
It's a United America scientific research station.
United America? Who's that?
Well, at the end of the 23rd century, America attempted to bring peace to the world by asking every nation on Earth to sign a peace treaty. Any nation that refused, they invaded. Now, a war ensued that was called the War Against War. Those countries who went to war because they were so against war, they were prepared to go to war to fight in a war against war, called themselves United America.
Welcome to Quiet Riot, the podcast that mixes politics, culture, and laughter. I'm Alex Andreou.
And I'm Naomi Smith. We're here to bring you the very latest about the big and small news stories of the day with compassion, reason, and hope.
Plus, we give you actions to take so that politics can be something you do, not simply something done to you.
So inhale those daffodils, resist those mini eggs, and help us begin another Quiet Riot.
Hello and welcome to Quiet Riot. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi.
And I'm producer Kenny.
This week, we analyse the Spring Statement, the UK growth prospects, and how it affects consumers, investment, and podcasters.
And we bring you the latest on the increasingly febrile state of the Middle East and how that is likely to affect the global and UK economies.
Well, none of which we would dare to do without our resident economist and all-round star, Vicky Pryce. Calimera, Vicky.
Calimera.
Welcome back to Quiet Riot.
Vicky, you work with an organisation called Radix Big Tent. Can you tell us a little bit about its work?
Yes, I mean, not only do I work with it, but I've now been appointed as chairman.
Oh,
congratulations.
Or as chair.
Mm-hmm.
Chair Vicky, that's it. I quite like that, Chair Mao. I mean, that would be interesting. But I don't quite have such powers. We have a fantastic CEO who runs it all, and it's a great thing to be involved. It has a variety of fellows who contribute to the thinking, but it's basically a think tank which is very much of the centre, rather good from that point of view because it's open to all sorts of ideas. And the way it sort of distinguishes itself from others is that it does projects which have to do with changing systems in the economy or even politics to make them work better. So we're doing a big project on how to get the capital markets to work better. We have a housing commission, of which I'm also a commissioner, with has been having Kate Barker, Dame Kate Barker as its chair. So we produced quite a lot. She's stepped out, but now she's coming back as a member. It has produced a number of recommendations on how to get that 1.5 million homes built. So we're getting views from the industry, from quite a lot of other interested parties, presented this to the government, and a number of our recommendations from the first report have been already adopted. And we're looking at lots and lots of other areas of where the whole process of getting things done can improve. I mean, obviously, we talked about planning and other stuff. So that's just two examples of what we do. But we're also looking, interestingly enough, at the way in which democracy is working. So we're doing a big project on funding of parties, on how to improve.
I saw that, actually. Yeah, I had to look at that.
Which is great. In fact, we're doing a podcast.
The lunchtime of the morning this goes out. We're recording on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And the talk is on Thursday lunchtime.
Yes.
So if you're listening to this in the morning, there's still time to sign up for
Absolutely.
it.
It will be chaired by Rachel Sylvester, who was until recently with The Times and is now the political editor of The Observer. It will include Rachel Blake, the Labour MP for Westminster, and a number of experts also from Transparency International, who are going to be talking about how to ensure that we have the right process to ensure that democracy works properly.
Yeah.
Well, of course, I mean, another thing we're doing, we're getting prominent people who've written various books to talk about this as well, and we're getting all our fellows involved too. And we have a very wide audience for all that, and it's me who actually runs that. We did get Alex Andreou also to speak at it. I have to say, he was actually recommended to me by the fellows. Usually it's me who comes up with the ideas, and I have to say that wasn't my idea originally.
Don't look modestly there, Andreou.
I'm just saying the word is spreading, man.
He was
absolutely
recommended
brilliant.
by Alex.
And we're having the next one after the one on the 5th. Is by Don McIntyre, who is right now in Jerusalem, as you would imagine, and probably stuck.
Of course, yeah.
So we're going to do it directly from there. I think originally he was going to talk about Israel and Gaza, but now it's much, much wider than that. And you probably have been seeing he's been writing for The Independent from there. So he's not going to be able to be back, we don't think. So we're going to do it from there.
Quiet Riot.
One of the electoral promises the government appears to be keeping is its intent to make the autumn budget the only big fiscal event of the year. This doesn't mean that the spring statement was devoid of interesting content. The OBR still published updated projections and forecasts to which Treasury responded, and by being divorced from leaks, trails, kites, rabbits and hats, it provides probably a better glimpse of government direction, if not the method via which it plans to get there.
Today, the new forecasts from the Office of Budget Responsibility show that our plan is the right one. Yeah. Inflation is down. Yeah. Borrowing is down. Living standards are up and the economy is growing. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, this government has restored economic stability. The previous government allowed inflation to skyrocket to over 11%. They stoked interest rates to 15-year highs and delivered the first parliament on record where people were poorer at the end than they were at the start of the parliament. That is their record.
In the 48 hours since Reeves delivered the spring statement to the Commons, it has become a cut-and-paste columnist trope to suggest that the conflict in the Middle East has made it all totally redundant. But is that true? We will explore the economic impact of the war with Iran in the second part of this conversation, but medium and long-term economic strategy is distinct to responding to short-term external shocks. Such shocks arguably make macro clarity even more important.
Vicky, international events to one side, difficult to do, I know. What are the headlines from this round of OBR forecast?
Well, I think you're quite right in saying that one has to have some sort of path ahead and then be able to respond to crisis. And I think it's one of the things which Rachel Reeves emphasized, and I think it was quite right, that we were trying to have more stability and some view, obviously, of where we may be going. One of those measures, if you like, to ensure that you can deal with crisis is to see that you have got some room for maneuver. If you're living just at the edge constantly and then a crisis hits you, then there's not very much you can do and it's chaos.
So this is the headroom we're talking about?
This is, yes. Yeah. So she has a headroom, by which we mean, how much does she have left on current spending by the end of this forecast period, which is 29-30. That amount seems to have increased quite significantly in the last year. Mm-hmm. And it's now increasing even more. So one of the things that she did announce is that that headroom has gone up by another billion or so. So it's now about 22 billion. Right. Which she has there for a rainy day, supposedly.
And so, guess what? It's pouring.
It's pouring, indeed. Nevertheless, you could have doubts about how big that headroom would be, because there are all sorts of assumptions made even before.
Of course.
Even before the crisis. So everyone looks at it with some sort of skepticism. And the reason why in particular they are quite skeptical and have been quite skeptical of that is that there has been a big recalculation of what the productivity in the economy is doing. And in the last budget in November, the end of November, we had quite an important shift in OBR thinking, which also affects, of course, growth for the economy overall. And that is that they thought that the reason why our productivity growth had been so low in the last couple of decades was because of this series of shocks. I mean, we're now expecting another one, of course, or are in the middle of one. The shocks, of course, included the financial crisis. Then we had Brexit. Then we had COVID. And then we had the war in Ukraine. So you can assume that this real decline in productivity, mainly because we didn't invest very much during those periods and we had austerity and everything else, will at some point be reversed, that it is a sort of aberration. Yeah. We can go back to the 2% growth we had before per annum. Well, they have now decided that this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
That it's now so entrenched in the economy with lower expectations and lower investment, less willingness to take risks and all that sort of stuff. It could, of course, all become completely obsolete again if suddenly AI makes a huge, huge difference to productivity. But for the moment, they have assumed that this change is not temporary, but is permanent. And if it's permanent, then it brings your growth prospects down.
Yeah.
And it is worth remembering, again, looking at the forecast of the OBR now, and this is the important thing, is to look at how they're supposed to be shaping before the crisis. Growth comes from possibly, improving productivity. So you have the same people, but they produce more. That's not bad. Or it comes from just employing more people. They produce more, which you distribute. Or it comes from both, which would be actually the best way of achieving growth in the economy, sustainable growth in the economy.
More people generating more products.
Yes, yeah. Which is, pretty good because everyone is better off as a result and prosperity goes up. And then because of that, and companies and firms are much more prepared to invest because they know there's going to be this growing demand and it's spread across. I mean, obviously there are differences from sector to sector, but overall, it's good news. Well, the problem looking ahead is that one bit of that productivity puzzle might actually work in the favour of the UK. So what they have for later years is a little bit of an improvement, that's the OBR, in growth to only 1.6%, but at the same time, a substantial lowering of the unemployment rate. But the reason, of course, that's happening, so they have something like 4.1% unemployment. It comes down from 5.3 where we are now. And that's why actually looking at the details of the OBR forecast is very interesting and very educational because they are assuming one thing, that the population increase that we've seen so far is going to slow down significantly. And we're going to have low migration figures, people coming in. And in fact, lots of people are forecasting that even by the end of this year, we might see emigration, people moving out of the UK.
Yeah,
now,
I've seen that in quite a lot of analysis, that it might tip into negative.
Indeed, but the interesting thing is, what does that do to the economy? We may want to focus perhaps on one aspect, which is what does it do to unemployment? But the other thing is, what does it do for government finances? And there are calculations that if that immigration figure, net migration into the UK, goes to below 200,000, then it becomes negative in terms of collecting taxes for the government. So there are some offsetting factors. Yes, perhaps you can see a little bit faster growth, possibly, but that assumes, of course, your productivity improves as you employ
and
fewer
maybe
people.
GDP per capita
improves
tips up a little bit,
which is exactly what she's got
to go around.
You're absolutely right, which is exactly what she's got in the forecast. So Rachel Reeves, when she was announcing her spring statement, in fact, majored on that and said that whereas GDP per capita had gone down in the previous government, in this parliament, we would have seen that increase quite significantly. So, and I can only imagine it's on the assumption of perhaps fewer people coming. That seems to be one of the major interesting things that perhaps we didn't quite expect to see.
On productivity, is it my impression, or is there a different conclusion that could be drawn from labour survey data than from HMRC data? Like, tax things show it improving, labour survey data shows it getting worse. So can they both be right, I guess?
They can both be right. Because, of course, the HMRC pay data is pay as you earn. So it is people who are in employment and who get a salary from their firms. You then have this whole other bit of entrepreneurs who run their own thing. You've got freelancers, self-employed, all that. And it is unfortunately the case that self-employed people, on average, are less productive than the rest because all of us, we're talking now, you charge a certain fee for doing something, but you might actually spend loads and loads of hours doing it, for which you don't necessarily charge. Whereas every hour you spend working for your employer, even though quite often you do more and you don't get overtime payment and all that sort of stuff, but nevertheless,
and also because I guess starting a business or whatever, it involves a huge amount of effort being expended into something that's not yet really producing anything tangible, certainly in terms of tax, in order to build it up into a thing that employs other people. And
it's true. Then you've got all these other people who are still trying to find a job and can't get one because they've lost jobs in the low productivity areas. So there is a view in government that the way to improve productivity is to get rid of the low productivity jobs.
Yeah.
What are the low productivity jobs? It's all the things in retail, hospitality, the jobs that, young students do at the beginning when they leave university, all those jobs, even actually,
But they're also
care
kind
jobs.
of the heart of the social life
Completely.
of an area.
And it can be a disaster because if you don't get those jobs, and they have been punished, those jobs, because the national insurance contributions...
The threshold going down and the
threshold
thing going up.
The threshold has gone down from 9,100 to 5,000. What that means is that employing people at the lower end of the pay scale, or even part-time workers, women, has become considerably more expensive than was the case before.
Yeah.
So all these jobs are disappearing.
We're shedding them.
Oh, you're shedding those
by
jobs.
design.
Well, possibly. That's what I was saying. It seems that that's what they're doing. And you've seen actually loads and loads of jobs which have been lost in retail and hospitality. Recently, you've seen also the impact of other things on pubs. And the problem is that people at that end who work part-time, you and I have talked about women, and I've written that many of them work part-time. Those part-time workers are caught by this, which means that the chances of earning in those jobs are disappearing. So they are the group which is more likely to fall into poverty than would otherwise be the case. And what about their kids? And the government at the same time has this aim to reduce child poverty, just lifted the 2-child benefit cap.
So is it fair to say that, as a broad summary, you end up in a situation where certain key metrics make things look better on paper, but in reality things are getting a bit worse? Is that the danger, basically, that you end up with an economy that looks healthier than it actually is in the real world?
Well, it certainly will get worse for some groups of people. It may not get worse on average. And the Resolution Foundation has put out some expectations that they have about what happens to real disposable incomes. And there is a serious problem.
I looked at that. Quite a funny title from the Resolution Foundation. They called it the understatement of the year, which I thought was quite funny.
On that very topic, there are assumptions built into the OBR's figure work that a lot of listeners may not know about. For example, my understanding, and do correct me if I'm wrong, is that the OBR assumes that fiscal drag isn't going to be a big player. In other words, Rachel Reeves will continue to increase allowances, tax allowances and such like. But of course, Rachel Reeves and plenty of other governments don't and haven't been increasing those allowances. And that sort of assumption can skew the figures quite heavily, can't they?
Well, the reality is that although they may have assumed that at the beginning, what Rachel Reeves has done is she announced that they were going to continue to freeze those allowances until the end of this parliament anyway. But what it means is that, if anything, it improves her fiscal position. And she's been collecting quite a lot of tax, not just because of the thresholds, but also because we have seen quite a lot of income coming in to them from self-employed, but in particular capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Quiet Riot. Instagram teen accounts have automatic protections for what teens see and who can contact them, plus time management tools. And Instagram will continue adding built-in safety features to help create age-appropriate experiences. Learn more about teen accounts and Instagram's ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Quiet Riot.
Given that short-term forecast for disposable income going up this year next, especially for lower income households, and that there's this good level of savings, why is there a lag to that becoming consumer confidence? Like, how can government encourage people to go out and spend that money?
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, it's a very good question, because you've got to balance out all sorts of things. One of the reasons why real disposable incomes are doing okay for the moment is because, of course, wages are rising faster than inflation. There's been a real increase in that. The expectation has been that those wages will slow down, but also inflation is going to come down. So it's really the gap between the two.
Yeah.
But then, of course, you've got all these people with wages which are rising faster than inflation, starting to pay more tax. Well, I think people have seen their job prospects being affected. I think that's the main reason why the consumer still feels a little bit insecure and prefers to keep their money in the bank, but also the fact that interest rates have stayed quite high. They've only just started coming down, and everything that's happening internationally might affect that quite considerably.
Of course, because you look around and you think, God knows what happens tomorrow, right?
Indeed. Businesses have been a lot less willing to invest and also hire. So vacancies have been reduced. People do not think that the prospects for finding work are particularly high. So they would rather hang on to what they've got. And I think that's what they're doing.
I guess you don't unlock spending by telling people that they're richer. They've just got to actually feel it. And I think they're so scarred by a succession of things, whether that was, the pandemic shock, energy price
Brexit,
shock,
the energy
mortgage
prices, so
rates going up,
lot,
and it just does make you cautionary. And so even if disposable income is rising on average, then it's about that gap between expectation and reality.
We've seen energy prices until a few days ago coming down. We had the energy cap, which was supposed to be going down by 7% in April. That's good news. But they had seen prices at the pump go down, no doubt about that. And also food prices. Yes, okay, they're still elevated. The latest figures we got from the British Retail Consortium still had prices go up by about 3.3% or thereabouts. But shops generally know that the consumer is quite reluctant to go out and spend. So what they're doing is they're having loads of offers. So between January and February, there was no increase in shop prices. And year on year, just 1% or 1.1. Now, if you compare that with wages still going up quite significantly in real terms, then there is spending power there. And the consumer should really feel quite confident, but they're not.
Yeah, I think we're observing a similar phenomenon towards the end of Biden's term. There was one piece of research there that really struck me. You went out and asked quite a large sample of people, how do you feel about the country's economic prospects? And they rated that answer. And then you asked them how they felt about their own prospects, and they rated that answer. And there was a massive gap. So people were saying the economy was quite gloomy and the prospects were quite bad, even though their personal security and their own prospects had improved. There was this strange disconnect.
And we had a little bit of that when Labour government first came in, the criticism that they were just being too Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to be said about vibe and talking stuff up and sounding chipper and ambitious. Those polling anomalies crop up everywhere. I mean, when you ask people about immigration locally in your community, are you worried about it? No. What about the country? Terrible, awful.
Yeah.
So it's not just a phenomenon around this. We see it repeated across all sorts of policy areas.
Now, in some ways, the most notable statement of intent in Reeves's speech was the clearest declaration to date of an intent to get closer to the EU. And I think the first time in a while that Labour leadership has called Brexit, not its implementation of the deal, but Brexit, wrong.
When governments lose control of the economy, as the Tories did, it is working people who pay the price. In their pay packets, in their bills, and in their mortgages. That's what the party opposite inflicted on working people over 14 years. Austerity that cut off investment. Brexit, which cut us off from our closest trading partners. And Liz Truss's disastrous mini-budget. Cheered on by the leader of the opposition and by the honourable member for Clacton. Oh, he's not here today. And I hate to break it to the Shadow Chancellor, but people stopped listening to them a long while ago. They opposed economic responsibility and backed Liz Truss. Wrong. They opposed closer ties to Europe and backed Brexit. Wrong. They opposed cuts in child poverty and want to repeat austerity. Wrong values, wrong economics. They are just plain wrong.
Naomi, how significant do you think this is? They've been moving in that direction for a while now, but this really is the strongest formulation of it we've heard, isn't it?
It was not a rejoin speech, a re-entry speech, but it was, without question, the clearest signal yet that government knows and is pursuing EU alignment as part of its growth strategy. In fact, a very, very central plank of it. No botched Brexit deal language, just Brexit, bad. Hasn't worked.
No making Brexit work, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. And, economically, trade intensity has fallen because of Brexit. Investment has lagged from comparison to most of our economic peers around the world. Non-tariff barriers are weighing very heavily on our small and medium-sized companies. And even the OBR, of course, has, incorporated long-run GDP reduction from Brexit into its baseline. What we are feeling from the government now is a real ambition to go further and faster with that reset. They have had some knocks. We've talked about the collapse in the talks around the security fund. They've probably not got quite as much as they
Which
wanted.
seem to be picking up again, by the
Maybe,
way. There are some,
yeah.
I'm hearing some noises
Yeah.
from Commission contacts that they're beginning to re-engage, if not renegotiate.
They have got an awful lot of ambition as the government in terms of 1.5 million homes and bringing down NHS waiting lists, improving public services, etc. And it needs to be funded. And that funding is going to have to now come in no small part from the private sector. We are going to need the growth in the private sector in order to get that headroom up, in order to be able to deliver. So I was very impressed by the delivery and the tone and the direct messaging around Europe. I thought it was a very, very strong speech by Rachel.
And one more tiny thing that hasn't really been picked up. She was listing things that basically the Conservatives got wrong. And I thought that was also quite interesting, because supporting Remain or Leave has been seen as, and was, a cross-party thing. But she's now pinning it on the Conservatives. After the purgings of Johnson and the people who followed him, there is no meaningfully pro-European bit of the Parliamentary Conservative Party.
But
they are Brexiters who are left, and they own this mess.
But much more importantly, what is left of the Tory voting bloc is quite pro-European. So while you're dead right, the Parliamentary Party, really very few of them. So she's talking to their voters, too. Simon Hoare, honourable exception, maybe a couple of others. But the people who are still prepared to maybe, tell a pollster they'll vote Tory, they're Cameronites. Yeah. They have not fallen in under the Farage Leave bloc, that 2019 Leave coalition that Johnson secured that has pretty much transferred directly to Farage. They are kind of homeless when it comes to a party that is economically right-wing but pro-European.
Vicky, economically, of course, this is not particularly contentious to say, but politically it involves some risk. Do you think there are enough low-hanging gains for the economy to neutralize the political risk, as it were? So are there things to actually really boost the economy in a way that people notice?
I think if you look at what has made the economy do sort of okay in the last couple of years, in the sense of growing by 1.3% as it did last year, when nothing very much really happened, it's because government has spent a lot of money. So it is government spending that's done it. What you really need is the private sector now to boost the economy, because there's a limit to what the government can do. I mean, they spend lots of money on the NHS and other stuff, but what you need is growth to come from the private sector really wanting to invest and really thinking the prospects are going to be better than they were. And we do know that trade is a major contributor to growth. If you restrict that in any way, and unfortunately in the UK, we have reduced trade intensity very significantly since we left the EU. And that has meant that loads of smaller firms in particular, which employ loads of people, if you add all the small firms together, and of course sole traders, they employ the bulk of the population in the UK. What you've seen is that they have stopped exporting to the EU. So getting closer, getting rid of all those restrictions that exist, and really working together, even in areas such as defense, where the government is now really seriously trying to be involved in the whole procurement money that would be available. It might be difficult to do, but anyway, that's what they intend to do. You might have expected that with such big majority, the Labour Party would have done something slightly more bold on this and courageous early on. They haven't, but of course, politically things have changed, because they now have the Green Party to worry about, which is pro-European. And they know, I mean, we've always known from the polling that Labour supporters generally want to stay as close to Europe as possible. In fact, if anything, rejoin if that was possible. But I was interested in listening to Rachel Reeves yesterday, saying it very strongly, because as you rightly said, until now it was the botched way in which they did Brexit, which in a way is also what Farage says from the other side. But she says Brexit was wrong. And I think those were the words, more or less, that were used. That is quite a shift. And nobody has picked it up and screamed about it, which suggests that they have prepared the ground reasonably well, and now they can push forward.
Alex, give us a call to action.
First and foremost, go to our bookshop and buy Vicky's book, Mismanaged Decline, What Politicians Won't Tell You About the Economy.
I went to the book launch. It was very good.
I finished reading it a few days ago. We'll stick a link in our bookshop, because actually talks precisely about that need for politicians to stop treating the public like a grumpy customer that needs managing. It's time to level with people. And this kind of Reeves bit of the speech that we're talking about is, I think, in that category. It makes you want to cheer because it's like, at long last, someone has said the really fucking obvious thing that no one was saying, you know? So it's a good book to read. And then if I can have a cheeky second one, I would also ask people to sign up for updates from the New Economics Foundation, who have put out good stuff about this statement and are running some really good campaigns. And we'll drop a link in the show notes.
Quiet Riot. Quiet Riot.
And now we go where snowflakes fear to tread. It's time, of course, for Wokie Dokie.
Wokie dokie.
Alex, what has got Matthew Badloss and friends into a complete froth this week?
Where snowflakes fear to melt. So this week, it's McDonald's that is getting everyone very, very angry. Let me give you the basic facts. McDonald's in Germany decided to run an advertising campaign during Ramadan, which I think is one of the smartest advertising campaigns I've ever seen, actually. So what it does is, because most countries have those electronic boards now, they've got them showing the packaging of something very familiar, like the McDonald's fries, without anything in it during the day. And then at sunset, it fills with fries, you see, and a happy Ramadan.
Iftar, yeah.
Now, I think that's clever for several reasons. First of all, because McDonald's is one of the companies that's being boycotted by many people over their links to the Israeli government. They're definitely near the top of that boycott list of people who feel strongly about Gaza. And so this is in part them trying to repair that reputation. Secondly, because I think it acknowledges what is a very large slice of the German population, almost 7%, 6 million something people, on what is a special time of the year for them. But third and most importantly is because I think it works for everyone. It actually makes you want the fries in there, even if you're not Muslim and fasting for Ramadan or whatever. It's basically subverting the trope of advertising the thing by using the very familiar wrapper for it. But this is not how it's been received. McDonald's in Germany is hiding food during Ramadan to prevent arousing Muslims, says End Wokeness. Tommy Robinson, New Era, which is very much like Tommy Robinson, Old Era, it seems to me. McDonald's in Germany has removed images of food from advertisements during daylight hours during Ramadan. The Muslim population of Germany is currently estimated at 6.5%, and the country is already changing for the invader.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that took a turn, didn't it? And then, even further to the right, if you can believe it, Martin Sellner saying, Muslims make up only 6.5% of Germany's population, yet a global mega corporation like McDonald's caters to them in this way. Why? They know the numbers. They are betting on the great replacement.
Oh, they actually went there.
Fuck me. That escalated quickly, as the youth say, right?
Someone needs a Happy Meal to cheer themselves up.
A kid's Happy Meal, I would suggest. Not only is McDonald's woke, I think this week, clever marketing is woke, which is what this was. It really is what this was. You know? So, there you go.
Well, Alex, that's
We've
a
gone
wonderful
from
find.
fries to fucking great replacement theory. Yeah. Would you like lies with that?
Quiet Riot.
Okay, we begin this next topic with the frequently needed caveat that our discussion is going to focus on what we know at the time of recording.
It's late Wednesday afternoon.
Since our weekend show, strikes against Iran and the ensuing Iranian counter-strikes have hit targets across the region, disrupted airspace, transport routes, and caused civilian casualties, raising fears of broader instability, including in the Lebanon and Gulf. Iran launched strikes across Bahrain, Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, and an Iranian drone also struck a runway at a UK military base in Cyprus. The US, for its part, is showing no sign of pulling back, Marco Rubio warned of intensification. Let's have a little listen.
We would love to see this regime be replaced. And ultimately, as the president said, he would love for the people of Iran to use this as an opportunity to rise up and remove these leaders. They've been wanting to remove them from a long time. We've seen successive waves of protests, and we've seen them slaughter people. Okay? But the objective of this mission is to make sure they don't have these weapons that can threaten us and our allies in the region. That's why we're doing what we're doing now. They're suffering a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, again, I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now. Someone was screaming, how long will it take? I don't know how long it'll take. We have objectives. We will do this as long as it takes to achieve those objectives, and we will achieve those objectives. The world will be a safer place when we're done.
The human cost is mounting fast, with 180 young children being killed when their school was struck. And meanwhile, Iran's Assembly of Experts has indicated that appointing a successor to Khamenei won't take long. After initially consulting government lawyers who advised against participation, Starmer approved a US request to use British bases for defensive purposes of destroying Iranian missiles at source in their storage depots or the launchers used to fire them. Trump condemned Starmer despite the change of heart, saying it took far too long. Economically, Brent crude has spiked, while global gas, which the UK is particularly reliant on, I think we've only got about 30% of our gas reserves full at the moment, have nearly doubled. So today, we are going to discuss how all of this might impact the UK in terms of energy, inflation, and the gilt markets, and the growing tension between European leaders on the best response to Trump, and of course, the right-wing media attack on Starmer for being, as Trump put it, no Churchill. Alex, Starmer is being attacked from all sides. On the left, people are saying he should not even have allowed bases to be used for a defensive operation. And of course, on the right, the media, Farage, Trump, accusing him of disloyalty, dithering, and many front pages on Wednesday picking up those Trump comments, comparing him very unfavourably to Churchill. Is the Churchill comparison even coherent here? And is the real story actually the fracturing of the European centre? You've got Germany going one way, Spain another, kind of leaving Britain awkwardly in the middle.
That is the European problem all over in every area for the last several decades, that you have sovereign nations deciding on a particular strategy on every conceivable issue. And it's actually particularly pertinent right now when you're beginning to get, again, this conversation about spheres of influence, because what you have is unitary powers like the US, Russia, China. And in Europe, you don't have that same unity of purpose and policy and stance and attitude. Yeah. Instead, you have a collection of countries, each of which goes in their own direction. And in many ways, I think if we want to survive in this spheres of influence environment, we're going to have to agree on what we pull together. Really agree on whether there's going to be some kind of joint defense body that protects Europe, because individually we're just too easy to pick off one by one, which is what Trump is doing. You know, he's choosing Spain to make an example of, saying he's going to stop trade with Spain altogether. Then he's
which
sort of
you can't do because Spain trades
France has already come out and said, you attack one of us, you attack all of us.
Exactly. Then he badmouths Starmer, but that has no practical counterpart. It's just him saying nasty things about Starmer. Who cares? He will unsay them tomorrow.
Yeah, but I do feel a bit sorry for him. Like, even I feel a bit sorry for Starmer this week.
I don't feel sorry for Starmer this week, because I think this week proves that this kind of difficult international relationship is not about pleasing a particular constituency of voters. It's about trying to walk a tightrope.
That's right.
I might do it right, I might do it wrong, you might agree, you might disagree, but don't fool yourself into believing that had I done the opposite thing, you would have loved it.
It's such a good example of how Starmer, in a slightly different role, would have been the perfect man. Absolutely the perfect man. The Prime Minister's role is not the role for Starmer. We've discussed on this show so many times.
Foreign Secretary, maybe something like head of NATO, something like that, actually.
Somewhere where you're expected to take punches left, right and centre, as he has been this week, and walk that tightrope. He's very good at it. The man has absorbed so many beatings this week. You have to think that inside, it must look like scrambled egg.
But also
right
to
now.
not react. It must take a huge amount of effort to just take it. Farage's attack was particularly interesting The core of his criticism was that Starmer is not a leader, he's a follower, because he didn't follow Trump into war quickly enough.
YouGov, I think it was on Monday, their polling came out, and Reform voters much more supportive of the US and Israel strike on Iran than everybody else. And then you've got Rupert Lowe really doing his level best to land some blows on Reform's voting numbers. And he is with that breakaway MAGA crowd of no intervention, don't do anything. And so I just think it's really interesting when Reform voters are answering that question. Do you think that that is adoration of their dear leader of Farage, or is it because they're pro-Trump?
It's probably a mixture of both, isn't it?
It's hard to be one without being the other. I think it really is.
But I don't think Farage has got the cult following, even in the UK, that Trump does, with that portion of
But it is the model, and it's becoming more and more of the model. And as he leans further and further into that model, the risk is that he alienates more of his core base because Britain ain't the US. But they're joined at the hip in so many ways.
But talking about who is also not the US is Canada. Just a couple of weeks ago at Davos, Carney was the darling of the global centre-left, this sort of principled technocrat standing up to Trump, warning the world about strong nations preying on the weak. And then, without being party to the military build-up or the planning, and without being consulted by Washington or Tel Aviv, he issued a statement from a trade mission in Mumbai completely backing the Israeli-US strikes. So is Carney a principles, rules-based order man that he has marketed himself as? Or is he just doing what everyone else is doing, like calculating how much punishment Trump will land on you in this scenario?
He filled in those comments later on Tuesday in a live press conference, and then there was some Q&A event in which he expanded on things even further, in which he said, I'm going to say something very honest, but it's important. You don't want to say anything in public that you can't back up. You've got to choose your words so carefully in terms of the language you use with him. It's quite different in private, and that creates an ability to work through things, but it's not easy, let's be clear.
What does that mean?
He's talking about dealing with Trump as a world leader.
Right, but would you not have hoped that he would have talked to that coalition of, middle-sized countries that he talked about at Davos so brilliantly before doing a public...
But there is a massive qualitative difference between the two situations, because he went to Davos and he was talking to European leaders about what it is we must do. This situation requires him to comment on what Trump is doing. Do you see what I mean? Even at Davos, he didn't comment directly on Trump. If you watch that speech
I know.
It's very clever. It's all about what we need to do as this other body of nations who are not fully on board with this madness. So he was talking to them without bringing him directly into it and saying this is how we need to coalesce in order to be stronger. On this, there's no way of making a statement that doesn't somehow condemn or approve of what Trump is doing. It goes back to exactly the same thing we're talking about with Starmer. There is no right option. There are only bad options when you have a nutcase like this on the helm of the world's most powerful military, vindictive in the extreme, impetuous, stupid. And so you're just choosing between horrible options.
And people like Carney and Starmer are going to be looking not just in the short term, even though it's going to be occupying their minds, you'd think, every waking hour, but there's the long term, their place in history. And at some point, the Iraq war comes back and raises its head.
Of course.
And there's the medium term, where, it's not going to surprise any of us if there are strikes on mainland America. There are sleeper cells in North America, that's known. And it's a question, some would say, when rather than if. And that risk applies to all of us in the West who align ourselves.
I remember 7/7 very vividly.
Completely. And so we tend to look at what's going on through a very short-term lens, but there's a very serious medium-term lens where the conflict spreads out with the Middle East, whether that's via refugee crisis or whether it is terror attacks or such like. And then there's the importance of the place in history. And Carney always strikes me as somebody who takes the long view, and I don't see any reason why he would be any different on this at all.
Quiet Riot. Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Quiet, Riot.
Vicky, disruption in the Strait of Hormuz for a month could cause LNG spot prices to double. According to Goldman Sachs, the Bank of England was anticipating, we think, a March rate cut. Is that now dead in the water, do you think? And are we staring down a repeat of the post-Ukraine inflation crisis when it comes to everything, but particularly energy?
Well, we do have a little bit of fiscal headroom. That's the first thing, since we've been discussing about how important it was to still hear what the OBR is now forecasting, despite the fact there were no new measures in the spring statement. So there is a little bit that can be used. But there is no doubt that if prices stay high, oil and gas prices stay high, in fact, they did double temporarily over the weekend. Gas prices certainly did, and oil prices also rose. We're now still left with gas prices something like 70% up, and oil prices just under 20% up, and who knows what's going to happen next, because the conflict is widening rather than shortening. So the likelihood is that we are going to see elevated prices for some time. The calculation is that if they stay where they are, we might see inflation 1% higher for the year than would otherwise be the case. Now, the OBR had anticipated that inflation would go down to 2.3% for the year as a whole, and the Bank of England had it going to below target of 2% by April. And that would have been the justification for cutting rates, even though at present inflation is still 3%. Well, the market has changed their mind. What we're seeing is that instead of an 80% certainty that there was going to be a cut in March before the first missile went out towards Iran, they now think there's only a 20% chance of that. So it is a problem for people. It is a problem for the Bank of England. It is a problem for growth. It affects really all sorts of other areas. It's not just the question of oil prices being higher and what's going to happen to the electricity cap, which at some point is going to have to go up quite significantly. Do we have enough storage? Have we planned enough for this? But the good thing is that apparently, this is an extraordinary thing because climate change occasionally comes to your rescue, we're supposed to have quite a mild March. But also in the
famous last word,
in the eastern part of the US, which of course had snowstorms.
Yeah.
It's all sort of melting. There is sufficient capacity around to let us, survive with the oil we have for a little bit longer. And of course, everything will be diverted elsewhere. But the worrying thing about what's happening on the trade front is that once you start getting things blocked, your freight rates go up. If you use more insurance, which is non-existent in some cases, as you know, President Trump said, we'll insure all those ships which are stuck there and we'll escort them. Right.
That's not how any of that works.
No,
that's not how any of that works.
And what you see is for goods as well, because of course it becomes more expensive to move things around, and if it takes longer, because of course nobody goes through the Suez Canal any longer because of the Houthis still there, even though they haven't quite started attacking again, but there is a worry. So what you've got is that it takes much longer for anything to go from A to B, and there is a direct correlation between the length of delivery and prices in the shops. And we saw that last time in all the crises, and that's the real worry. So will it stay at just 1% inflation? You asked whether it would go up to where it was before. Probably not. Maybe the conflict will be over tomorrow, in which case it would just have been a bit of a blip, which we've seen a number of times before, and it will all come down. And really, we need to be looking at futures. What are the markets thinking about buying in 6 months' time or buying for 6 months' time?
Well, just weeks ago, Trump basically forced India to stop buying Russian oil. As part of the trade deal that they were hammering out.
Them to buy
and
it.
now he's forcing them to buy it, right? He's threatening, he was threatening punishing tariffs to make it happen before. Now, with everything that's been happening, the Strait of Hormuz being all but shut down, India is having to buy Russian oil again, and Indian oil ministry officials are seeking leeway, quote unquote, from Washington to purchase millions of barrels of Russian crude. If Trump does let India off the hook on Russian oil because of his war, what does that say about the entire sanctions architecture underpinning Western policy on Ukraine, do we think?
And doubly good for Putin because also puts up the price of oil. Oil is quite a weird one, which is why everyone is quoting what's going on with gas and LNG. Because with oil, there is a sort of standard procedure of usually having 60 days worth of stock.
Right.
And most countries will be able to run that down by 5 to 10 days before any spike becomes sort of permanent. So if this turns out to be a very quick war, then the oil prices will renormalize. It will be a blip. But it's literally on the length. Mm-hmm. So if they can wrap this up within the next 4 or 5 days, then we might avoid a permanent spike. But if they can't, it might cause a global inflation, bringing down growth.
Now, thank you. That really does answer the point on the inflationary aspect or not of it. But it doesn't get to the principle of are sanctions worth their salt if you can break them because of insert reason here. And what does that mean for the poor old Ukrainians who, let's face it, are fighting a war every single bloody day?
Well, there's two levels, at least two levels, where the Ukrainians are struggling here. You've just highlighted one, but of course, we all know that the tackle principle means that anybody watching Trump lash out will be thinking that if we just wait long enough, he's going to change his mind anyway. So there's instability. And so everything that Trump does, surprise, surprise, seems to, on multiple levels,
help Putin.
Help Putin every single time. Whether that's planned or not, who knows with Trump? The chaos is very hard to predict. But
it doesn't seem to be planned. I mean,
but it's a happy coincidence from Putin's perspective, isn't it?
But we were talking about this on Sunday, Kenny, and it really is like Bill and Ted's Excellent Middle Eastern Adventure or something. Pete Hegseth coming out on Wednesday and sort of celebrating sinking a ship with 180 people on board, not inside the conflict zone.
No.
Just international waters off the coast of Sri Lanka, celebrating that hasn't happened since the Second World War, as if that's a great thing.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary, the lack of seriousness, that using Mar-a-Lago as the command center, releasing the statement about this on Truth Social, all of it suggests a complete lack of it's like a complete lack of understanding that you're taking lives.
Like you're sat in your boxes playing a computer game.
I was going to say, it's a language of bad
It was like Iran are toast. It's like you're talking about another fucking country. What is wrong with you? And I really do hope that people like Hegseth actually live to see the inside of a war tribunal, because I think they are heading in a direction where they might need to. They have trashed the rules of engagement during this period. They started with blowing Venezuela's ships off the Caribbean randomly, and now they're torpedoing ships in international waters. What's that going to do to insurance prices?
Oh, and just going on TV and saying, we'll just take any port. If Spain won't let us use them, well, nothing can stop us. Okay, so the signal that is sending to every country in the world is all of your military assets are a liability.
Completely. And on top of that, when we're discussing how mad these people are, there are others behind the scenes making money. I mean, Trump, it was reported, is charging America for using Mar-a-Lago for things that he should be using the White House for. There are multiple lawmakers in America who sit on the boards of companies that are directly linked to the arms industry. They are going to be coining it in one way or another.
Well, and we know that there was, I don't know how many millions worth of bets on the date of the attack on Iran by Trump insiders. And it's not even illegal.
No. And then those who've got the inside stare, of which there will be significant numbers, can gamble on the legitimate chaos that's caused when stock markets react, go up and down. It's very easy to make tens of millions of dollars if you know what's going to happen. That volatility is the friend of people.
And so in this framework, you put Starmer trying to do the minimum possible, really, to not alienate the US as a NATO ally, which denying them use of UK NATO bases would do. And then they would turn around and say, fine, you're on your own in Ukraine, which they're itching to do anyway. So what Starmer is doing is actually kind of reminding them something I've brought up a couple of times, that the onward bases that they use in Europe and the Pacific that belong to other NATO members are really very useful to them. Do you remember I've twice said, speculatively, if we deny them use, where is their closest point if they want to do something in the Middle East? You know, it's a long way away. And so it reminds them that they need NATO still.
Yeah.
But also, it doesn't jump into this madness before you know whether they have a plan, whether they have a strategy. Because at the moment, it just doesn't look like they do.
I am so certain that there is no plan beyond this sort of shock and awe initial strike. And playing out from all of that, of course, is, as always happens with war, the mass displacement of people.
Yeah.
And we are now already seeing millions of Iranians looking for ways out. Now, Iran is not a small country. It has got an enormous population. And Turkey is the traditional first stop for many fleeing conflict in the Middle East. Of course, they've already felt the impacts of Syrians leaving and entering Turkey. It's a well-trodden path. How does a Europe already under pressure on migration handle the potential exodus on this kind of scale? You know, up to now, they've basically been trying to fund Turkey keeping Syrians in Syria.
Yeah, and Turkey has been using those numbers to basically extract money from the EU.
Absolutely. So, but I mean, you know, we've got 100 million people potentially in Iran that might want to be on the move.
So
I mean,
weirdly, same as crude oil, right? If this is a very short conflict,
They'll go
you
back.
will not see those huge movements. Like most people are internally displaced before making the decision to journey across a continent. So again, shortness of the conflict becomes key. And on that, I am relatively optimistic because I think by now, I sense that Trump is looking for an off-ramp. Certainly all the stuff about blaming Israel, they conned us into doing it, the administration was saying. And I think Iran will be looking to offer that off-ramp to him. And so I think we're building up to a situation where in 2 nights' time, Friday night, there will be the climax of the operation where they will drop really big bombs or whatever, and Iran will announce and offer him basically loads of crude oil at a cut price, which is what Trump is looking for, same as Venezuela. And everyone will go, oh, wasn't that marvelous? Job done.
What we don't know is what happens inside Iran itself and whether or not the potential for fragmentation within Iran on a social level or geographical level, completely.
Yeah.
And you uncork a country that's got such strong fragmentation already and uncork it even a little bit, the risk is there that you create a relatively low level. I only say relatively because compared with the world going to nuclear war, it's relatively low level, but it still creates a potential refugee crisis. At which point,
and a potential Yugoslavia,
completely.
you know, because you have effectively the same situation. Like Tito was keeping an authoritarian lead on these disparate...
And we know how Europe handles these sort of scenarios. It handles them badly because these are difficult things. And we also know how it plays out politically. And how it plays out politically is that people like Farage, who are cheering for Trump and cheering for what's going on in Iran, all of a sudden start booing and going, boo, foreign people coming over here again. They just refuse to take responsibility for their own actions. There's a very depressing inevitability about how that will play out should we get to the very unfortunate situation that there is a refugee crisis of one sort or another.
Alex, we talked a little bit about the Tories. Where is Kemi Badenoch at in terms of her criticism of Starmer and pretty ungracious, changing the precedent of the opposition, usually on matters of such global significance, supporting government?
Yeah. I thought Wednesday's PMQs were a low point from a very low point for Kemi Badenoch, and let's listen to a little bit of it.
This is obviously an extremely serious situation, and I know the whole country is worried about the potential for escalation. That's right. They're worried about the impact on their lives, particularly when they see what's happening with energy. The family and friends of those who are caught in the region will be worried sick. And of course, we've got civilians and military personnel at risk in the region. We need to act, therefore, with clarity, with purpose, and with a cool head. What I was not prepared to do on Saturday was for the UK to join a war unless I was satisfied there was a lawful basis and a viable, thought-through plan. That remains my position.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has read out a long list. It is not enough. We are in this war whether they like it or not. What is the Prime Minister waiting for? He should be doing more. Yesterday, the Chancellor could have given more money to defence. Instead, she gave more money for welfare. Their priorities are all wrong, Mr. Speaker. Their priorities are all wrong. They can chanter as much as they like.
They came into office, and what did they do? Not only did they cut the defence budget, they missed army recruitment targets every year for 14 years. They left morale in our armed forces at an all-time low, and our forces hollowed out. That's the words of Ben Wallace, the former Defence Secretary. She's right. The war is, of course, happening now. We have to focus on that. Across the country, people are worried about those that are trapped in the region. And I can update the House that yesterday, more than 1,000 British nationals arrived back in the UK on commercial flights from the UAE. A further 8 flights are due to leave the UAE to the UK today. I can confirm, Mr. Speaker, that the first charter flight is expected to leave Oman later, and 2 more will come in the coming days. The country really does want to know this. I'm sorry. Family and friends are worried sick about people who are caught out. I will not be put on. And can I urge all those in the House who have constituents who are caught in this to make sure that they do register their presence so we can do whatever we can to help them get home safely.
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't asking about evacuations. I was asking about defence spending. He needs to focus on the question he's being asked, not the statement that was prepared in the bunker. The truth is that because they spent money on welfare, there is no defence investment plan. They can chant as much as they like. They are pathetic, spending money on welfare instead of defence spending. He doesn't understand his policy. He's got a sea of orcs and goons who have no idea how anything is working at all. Mr. Speaker, after last week's by-election, isn't the truth that he is... Isn't the truth... They might not like to hear it, but they are going to hear it, Mr. Speaker, whether they like it or not. Is it not the truth that he is prioritising his job security over our national security?
Mr. Speaker, moments like this define a leader of the opposition. They can either step up, act in the national interest and show that they're fit to be Prime Minister, or they can expose their utter irrelevance.
I just think the idea that the UK owes it to America to follow them blindly in every misadventure, even when it's blindingly obvious that there's no plan in place, there's no international legal basis for the action they're taking. I just think it's stupid and dangerous and undermines the British government's authority.
The importance of words again. I don't think that we're in a situation where we're either blindly following America or not blindly following America. We're blindly following Trump and his acolytes, and that's not the same thing. Yeah. Trump does not equate with America. He's not following the same rules. He's acting unconstitutionally. He's an enemy of so many Americans. And so the words we use, I think, when we talk about following the American stroke Trumpian lead, I think are important because responsibility should be pinned upon the clowns who actually are responsible, as opposed to burning our entire relationship with the United States.
But even tonally, just showing up and calling everyone stupid and calling everyone weak.
Oh, the house is on fire. Don't score points. Be statesman-like for one.
I know. If I were in Starmer's situation, that is the PMQs I would be praying for.
Yeah.
I would be praying for that Kemi Badenoch to show up, and I can say, well, enjoy yourself. I've got responsibility for lives here, and I'm going to stay serious.
While we stick with the issue of the displacement of people, of course, there are probably 1 million people caught up in the travel chaos, non-Iranians.
My nephew was traveling from Southeast Asia via Cairo to Athens on Monday, and we were all basically just tracking the flight and the thing
and it was
every
fine.
moment. It was absolutely fine.
Oh, thank goodness. We've got people all over the world in the wrong place, aircraft in the wrong place, crew in the wrong place. that's going to cost an enormous amount of money.
Yeah. Huge airlines like Qatar and Emirates
having to pay
without
out
their hub.
Yeah, and having to pay out through the nose to keep people in hotels and fed and all of that. Those poor people we feel very sorry for. In the order of magnitude, we feel most sorry for innocent Iranians being slaughtered. Secondly, people that are through no fault of their own in the wrong place. The group I have the least amount of sympathy for, though, I mean, none, are the tax-dodging idiots. Isabel Oakeshott could be one of them, who slag off the country, tell us London isn't safe. They want to go and live in a safe country like Dubai, and are now finding themselves under missile strike. Desperate for British consular services, funded by a taxpayer, to send rapid deployment teams to repatriate them back out of Dubai and home. Can we take a moment to say a few words about how we feel about that kind of person?
I don't want to sound flippant because there are people who are, genuinely innocently out there for whatever reason. Loads of them for work. No. But like the tax exiles. It's an 8-hour flight. I would negotiate with them.
Yeah.
I would have each one accompanied by an HMRC employee negotiating their precise tax status. And if they don't want to play ball, I understand Rwanda is a perfectly safe third country, and we have some accommodation all paid for over there. That's waiting.
Albania might take them.
Albania might take them. Or they could just go to the nearest safe country. I mean, why do they have to trek across the whole continent?
Listeners, just so you know, I'm a decent human being, and I just say we rescue people regardless of how good or bad they are, and we deal with them when we get home. But there's good to come out of this, because when I was on the train on the way in, there was a tweet from Mail Plus popped up from Sarah Vine.
Of course.
Why I'm tuning my tiniest violin for the ghastly Dubai influencers. They're agreeing with you, Naomi. And why anyone who abandoned Britain for the soulless desert should pay to return. The lure of tax-free living may have sounded like a dream come true, but at what cost? Very first comment on that particular tweet from somebody called Isabel Oakeshott. Quick question. Have you ever been to Dubai? If so, how long did you stay? They're eating themselves.
Yeah. Can I ask one last question, Vicky? Are we reaching a kind of state where the global economy cannot absorb any more shock after shock after shock? Is there such a point of
no return?
Basically no give being left, no fat being left there to absorb this constant insecurity and...
Maybe. I think what people are pointing to is the fact that we have had to all countries borrow so much during all these crises, and there is a limit to how much more you can borrow. Yeah. Well, I mean, I presume you can write it all off. Lots of people will lose money, including our pensions.
Used to be a very regular thing.
Absolutely. Let's do that one, God. But yes, there is a possibility. I mean, after all, lots of big firms go bust and all the shareholders lose out. In this case, of course, all our pensions will disappear and all that sort of stuff. So if there is indeed something major that happens. But so far, because apart from AI, investment opportunities haven't been there, there's still a willingness of the markets to lend to governments at the right price. That's why actually we have to pay quite a lot to borrow, and that's why our costs of servicing the debt are so high. But it is becoming increasingly difficult to carry on saying this and offering them maybe also a way out in the end, because they have to see that things perhaps will improve at some point. That's really the question mark. Are we exhausting the capital markets or not?
Because the other part of that equation is broken as well, as we talked about in the first half of this conversation. So governments hope to absorb that debt by growth, and the rates are higher and the growth isn't there. So both bits of that equation are a big problem.
You can absorb it, of course, by inflation, as Naomi was asking earlier. If you have a rapid increase in inflation, a lot of that
not politically the greatest thing.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right.
Call to action. If you really want to know what's going on in the world, you've got to be subscribed to our sister show, Behind the Lines with Arthur Snell. This week he had a brilliantly timed episode out with an Iranian expert. Go and hoover it up. It is well worth your time, energy and cash.
Quiet Riot.
And that's it for today's show. Thank you very much to Vicky for making the complex simple for us simple people once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And an even bigger thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. Remember, you can help us keep bringing this show to everyone at the same time, free of charge, by backing us for as little as $5 over at ko-fi/Quiet Riot Pod.
But if the economy is hitting your purse strings too hard to do that at the moment, then do remember you can still help us by doing 3 things. First, make sure you're subscribed not only to this show, but to our sibling podcasts, Podyssey and Behind the Lines. Second, leave us reviews. Update your old reviews. Leave us a review on a different platform and share the shows with a friend. And finally, head over to our bookshop. The link is in the show notes. Anytime you're in the mood for a new read, both Vicky and Arthur have new books out that you will not want to miss. The links are all in the show notes.
As ever, we'll be back on Sunday with a wrap-up of the week. But until then, keep as calm as possible in these ballistic times. And don't forget to riot. Just, please, do it quietly.
We love you lots.
Bye!
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith and Alex Andreou. Produced by Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangita. Artwork by Simona Canelu. And edited by me, Alex Rees.
Quiet Riot.
It's fine.
How do I sound, Kenny?
You sound okay. Keep talking.
Okay, hello, I am here.
And just take a deep
I need to quickly get on the Wi-Fi.
Say after me,